Fascinating blend of, like historical fantasy and contemporary anxieties, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And it starts right off the bat,
Right.
right? With this outlandish claim from our main character, Prince Tiger.
Okay.
Apparently, his right to the throne rests on this centuries-old secret about his great-grandmother.
Hmm. That's the thing, right? It's presented as like this hidden lineage, something that most people wouldn't even consider.
Right.
It immediately raises questions about how information, even if it's, questionable, can be used to legitimize someone's actions.
Okay, so because on the surface, claiming descent from a royal maid doesn't exactly scream heir to the throne. It's like the author is hinting at the audacity of Prince Tiger's play right from the start.
Exactly. He's crafting a narrative. And that's a theme we see throughout the story, right? This power of a compelling story, especially in international relations.
And that narrative takes an unsettling turn in chapter 4
Mm-hmm.
with that whole conversation about India's population.
Yeah.
It felt jarring, almost out of place, but now I'm thinking it's a deliberate clue from the author. What do you think?
Well, it's crucial to remember the context here, right?
Yeah.
Restoring an empire. This isn't just about reclaiming past glory. It's about power dynamics on a global scale. And when Prince Tiger talks about, reducing populations, it suggests a chilling disregard for the people, the cultures involved.
So it's like he sees the world as this chessboard,
Yes.
and entire nations are just pawns in his game.
Exactly. And that brings us to Sergei, right? Someone who seems very far removed from Prince Tiger's world of, palaces and political maneuvering.
Right.
He's a young man from Ukraine trying to rebuild his life in Bulgaria after a personal tragedy.
His storyline feels almost like a separate book at times. Why do you think the author chose to weave it in with Prince Tiger's schemes?
It serves multiple purposes, right? I mean, on a human level, Sergei's struggles ground the story. It reminds us of the real world consequences of these grand ambitions, but it also sets up this potential collision course. As Sergei tries to heal, he gets caught in this web of intrigue, whether he wants to be or not.
Right, right.
And the fire in his apartment building, I mean, that's no accident.
Oh, yeah, that scene was terrifying.
Yeah.
The way the author describes the smoke, the heat, the sheer panic,
Mm.
it makes you feel like you're like right there with Sergei, desperate to escape. It feels like this turning point for him, like
Yeah.
pushing him towards this dangerous path.
And just as Sergei is forced from his home, we see Prince Tiger literally hiding his true face behind this mask.
Yeah.
Chapter 6 and 7, they go into surprising detail about the discomfort, the risk of exposure. But it's clearly not just about practicality, right?
No, it's such a strong image. The mask becomes this symbol of the hidden agendas, the deceptions at play. It makes you wonder who else might be wearing a mask in this story, both, figuratively and literally.
That's a question that lingers as we're introduced to a whole new cast of characters in chapters 11 and 12. The action shifts to Karelia.
Okay.
Now, and this is important. Karelia is a real-world republic in Russia with a history of territorial disputes,
Oh, real.
which immediately raises the stakes.
Okay. And those Russian characters,
Yeah.
they claim to be allies of Prince Tiger, right?
Yeah.
Supporting his whole vision of a restored British Empire. But something about their motives feels off.
Off, exactly. The author is masterful at planting those seeds of doubt.
Yeah.
Are these Russian characters truly invested in Prince Tiger's success, or are they playing their own game, using him for their own ends? It adds a delicious layer of tension to the narrative.
And just when you think it can't get more complicated, we get Sergei's forced recruitment attempt in chapter 13.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about pressure. He's approached by one of those Russians, lays out this plan for him to become a double agent.
It's a textbook example of coercion. The pressure tactics, the appeals to patriotism, right? But there's also this subtle undercurrent of threat. The author doesn't explicitly state why Sergei refuses, but it's clear he senses something isn't right.
He's already been burned once.
Literally by forces outside his control.
Yeah. And as Sergei is grappling with this impossible choice, we're given this glimpse of the chaos brewing back in the UK through the eyes of George, this Home Office employee.
This shift in perspective in chapters 15 and 16 is brilliant. We're no longer just following Prince Tiger's machinations. We see the ripple effects of his actions through the eyes of someone seemingly ordinary.
Right, so George represents the unsuspecting public, caught in the crosshairs of something they barely understand.
Exactly.
And the way the author builds suspense through the rumors, the whispers of a plot, it's like a pressure cooker about to explode. So we left off with Sergei facing this impossible choice.
Right.
George caught in this web of suspicion.
Yeah.
And Prince Tiger, Well, he vanished into the geopolitical wilderness.
Yeah, talk about a cliffhanger.
I know, right?
And it speaks to this larger theme that, that emerges in these chapters, this feeling of information overload,
Right.
of not knowing what's true, who to trust.
Yeah.
It's like we're all George, right?
Yeah.
Trying to make sense of events that seem just beyond our grasp.
And nowhere is that more evident than in that mysterious trip to Vladivostok in chapter 18.
Oh, yeah.
That ship loaded with materials.
Right.
That's been haunting my thoughts ever since I read it.
Well, the ambiguity surrounding those materials, I think it's deliberate on the author's part.
Do you think so?
Yeah, it's a classic thriller tactic, right? Leaving the audience to fill in the blanks.
Right.
But it also mirrors the way information is used in the real world, right?
Okay.
And what seems like a simple phrase, ship loaded with materials, can have vastly different meanings depending on the context, the source, the intent.
So it's a reminder that we're constantly bombarded with information.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to decipher what's real, what's manipulation, what's just plain noise.
Precisely.
Okay.
And while Prince Tiger is orchestrating this, shadowy operation, Nikolai, back in Russia, he embarks on this series of increasingly reckless actions.
Yeah.
Stolen car, the bank heist.
Right. It's like he's gone completely off the rails.
Right.
What do you make of that sudden shift in his character?
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Here's a man who was initially presented as this brilliant strategist,
Right.
a staunch ally of Prince Tiger. But as the story unfolds, we see these cracks in his facade.
Sure.
The pressure, the weight of their shared ambition, it pushes him to extremes.
And let's not forget, like Nikolai's ideology, this belief in restoring past empires, it's inherently dangerous, right?
Absolutely.
It's built on this foundation of conquest and subjugation,
Yeah.
which never ends well.
It's a stark reminder that nostalgia, especially when it comes to power dynamics, can be a dangerous drug.
Yeah.
The world has moved on from the age of empires.
Right.
And any attempt to recreate that past is bound to have catastrophic consequences.
And those consequences come to a head in that final confrontation we're given.
Yeah, it's chaotic.
It's a chaotic scene, yeah, full of ambiguity. I'm still not entirely sure who survives,
Right.
but one thing's for sure, the stakes have never been higher.
What struck me about that final scene is the desperation on both sides.
Yeah.
It's as if these characters, so caught up in their own agendas, have lost sight of what they're even fighting for.
Wow.
It becomes this struggle for survival, a last-ditch effort to salvage something from the wreckage of their ambitions.
It's a far cry from the grand visions of restoring empires that we saw earlier in the story, huh?
Right.
What about those mysterious materials? Did the author ever reveal what was on that ship?
Not explicitly,
Okay.
but there are strong hints that the materials were intended for a secret base in Canada?
What?
A staging ground for Prince Tiger's grand plan.
A secret base.
In Canada.
In Canada.
Yes.
This just keeps getting wilder.
It's a bold move by the author, taking the story to this unexpected location.
Right.
But it also raises questions about the global reach of these characters' ambitions.
Oh.
It's not just about reclaiming lost territory, it's about reshaping the world order with potentially devastating consequences.
And in the midst of all of this, we have Sergei, who's been recruited by George to infiltrate this Russian operation in Canada.
Talk about walking into the lion's den.
I know, right?
It's a testament to Sergei's resilience, his determination to forge a new path for himself, even if it means facing incredible danger.
Right.
Remember, this is a man who has already lost so much,
Right.
who's been betrayed by forces outside of his control.
He's a survivor.
Yeah.
But going up against Nikolai, who seems to have descended into this, like, vodka-fueled frenzy.
Right. It's a suicide mission.
It's a clash of two very different forces.
Right.
Sergei, driven by this desire to protect himself and those he cares about.
Yeah.
And Nikolai, consumed by an ideology that has twisted his sense of morality. It's the human cost of these grand ambitions.
Yeah.
The way individuals get caught in the crossfire of ideologies they may not even fully understand.
Okay, so we're back. And I have to say, this deep dive has taken us to some pretty unexpected places.
It has.
We've gone from, like, dusty old lineages to secret bases in Canada,
Right.
all while grappling with questions of information, manipulation, the very nature of power.
And now, as we delve into these final chapters of Prince Tiger and Russian Bear,
Right.
the tension, It ratchets up even further.
Yeah.
Sergei's mission to sabotage that Russian ship, it's a masterclass in suspense.
The author does not shy away from the technical details either.
No, they don't.
Remember, like, how they describe the specific equipment Sergei uses, the risks involved in bypassing security systems, even the potential environmental impact of his actions.
It's a far cry from those, those classic spy thrillers where gadgets just magically do the trick.
Right.
This felt real,
Yeah.
grounded, in a way that makes the danger all the more palpable.
Right. And it highlights the high stakes of Sergei's mission, right?
Yeah.
This isn't just about, like, disabling a ship. It's
Correct.
about preventing a potential global catastrophe.
It's easy to forget that behind all the geopolitical maneuvering,
Yeah,
there are real-world consequences.
absolutely.
Human lives hanging in the balance.
Lives like Nikolai's, for example.
Right.
His downfall is almost like Shakespearean in its tragedy.
Yeah.
He starts as this cunning strategist, right?
Yeah.
This master manipulator.
Hmm.
But by the end, he's this broken man,
Wow.
clinging to an ideology that has consumed him entirely.
That final confrontation with the Canadian forces, it's heartbreaking.
It is.
He's outmatched, outmaneuvered, yet he still believes like he can somehow achieve his grand vision of a restored British Empire.
Yeah, it's delusion at that point.
It's a reminder that power, especially when fueled by a warped sense of history, can be utterly blinding.
It's blinding.
So what about Prince Tiger?
What about him?
It's almost as if he fades into the background, as Nikolai's story takes center stage.
That's an astute observation.
Yeah.
And I think it's intentional on the author's part.
You do.
Prince Tiger, for all his machinations, ultimately becomes this symbol of the fleeting nature of power.
Okay.
He's a cautionary tale about the dangers of, clinging to past glories,
Right.
of trying to reshape the world in the image of a bygone era.
So we've come to the end of our deep dive.
We have.
What are your final thoughts on Prince Tiger and Russian Bear?
Well, I think the story is this powerful reminder that we are all caught in this web of information,
Yeah.
often without knowing who to trust or what to believe. It challenges us to think critically about the narratives we encounter,
Okay.
to question the motivations of those in power,
Right.
and to recognize the very real consequences of unchecked ambition.
It's a call to action for all of us to be more discerning consumers of information.
I think
To look beyond the surface and grapple with the complexities of our interconnected world.
because the battle for truth,
Right.
for influence, it's constantly being waged.
Right.
And it's a battle fought not just on battlefields, but in the minds of individuals.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this. The next time you encounter a news story, a political speech, even a casual conversation,
Right.
remember the lessons of Prince Tiger and Russian Bear.
Ask yourself,
Ask yourself, who benefits from this narrative?
what information is being left out?
And most importantly, how can I be an active participant in shaping a future where truth and justice prevail?
It's a question worth asking.
This has been your deep dive, and as always, keep asking those tough questions.